Good evening. The date is Monday, January 19th, 2026. Tonight, the world map looks different than it did a mere fortnight ago.
It does.
We find ourselves standing at a precipice, looking out over a geopolitical landscape that is shifting with a velocity, an intensity rarely witnessed in the post-war era.
It's a moment of profound consequence. We're seeing a collision of ideology, military force, and economic necessity.
From the dense urban centers of Caracas to the frozen strategic expanses of the Arctic.
Exactly. And the events of the last 2 weeks are not isolated incidents. They are chapters in a new narrative of power.
So our task tonight is to look past the flashing headlines, to really understand the architecture of this new reality.
And we must assess the facts soberly, without the distortion of fear or the cloud of bias.
Before we begin that assessment, it is essential to understand the lens through which we are viewing these events.
Of course.
This special deep dive report is presented in partnership with ProWave AI. The intelligence we are discussing tonight has been synthesized and verified by Stylo News. And for those unfamiliar, Stylo News is not a standard aggregator. It's the consumer-facing application of the Stylo Intel Ops software.
The same formidable engine used by government agencies, military command centers.
And enterprise operations, yes, for high-level decision-making. That distinction is vital. In a standard news cycle, you receive reports.
But with Stylo, we're utilizing something called pattern of life analysis.
Precisely. The system employs AI agents that scour over 250 distinct sources in more than 20 languages simultaneously. It allows us to see the signal within the noise.
So effectively, the listeners joining us tonight are privy to the same grade of analytical tools designed for global decision makers.
We are, in a sense, looking at the world through the eyes of the intelligence community.
Then let us turn our attention immediately to the catalyst, the event that ignited this firestorm. We have to go back to January 3, 2026.
A date that will be remembered.
In a move that stunned diplomatic circles from Brussels to Beijing, the United States executed a massive kinetic military operation in Caracas, Venezuela. And this was not a proxy war. This was direct intervention, a lightning strike.
The target was the Fuerte Tiuna military complex,
The very heart of the Venezuelan defense apparatus, executed by U.S. Delta Force operators with deep-layer intelligence support from the CIA. The operation achieved its primary objective with startling efficiency.
which was the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and the First Lady.
Correct. They were captured.
The images of that extraction have been broadcast globally. We know they were immediately extradited to New York to face trial, but we must interrogate the justification.
Of course.
The White House, specifically President Trump, authorized this strike under the banner of narco-terrorism and national security.
The narrative presented to the American public is that the Maduro regime was the head of a snake, a cartel leadership responsible for the overdose deaths plaguing American cities.
And this is where the Stylo analysis compels us to pause and look closer at the data.
It does. The official narrative is clean, but the reality is messy. We've analyzed intelligence assessments from multiple independent bodies, including the independent and internal U.S. government files.
And what do they say?
Well, while the accusation of narco-terrorism provided the legal framework, the casus belli, the data contradicts the claim that Venezuela is the primary driver of the opioid crisis.
You're referring to the fentanyl statistics.
Precisely. The overwhelming majority of fentanyl entering the United States originates from networks deeply entrenched in Mexico, not Venezuela.
And cocaine.
The primary hubs remain Colombia and Peru. Venezuela is a transit point, certainly, but it is not the source.
So if the stated goal was to stop the flow of drugs, the target selection is.
Geopolitically curious, it suggests that while counter-narcotics was the headline, the underlying drivers were likely regime change and the control of strategic resources.
Venezuelan oil.
The largest proven oil reserves in the world.
There is another layer to this operation that has not received sufficient airtime, certainly not in the domestic press.
And it carries the risk of a much wider conflagration.
The Pentagon has reported 0 U.S. casualties. A tactical success, undoubtedly. However, on the ground in Caracas, the death toll tells a different story.
It does. The Cuban government has officially confirmed the death of 32 Cuban officers during the raid on Fuerte Tiuna.
We must weigh the gravity of this.
Absolutely. These were not Venezuelan regulars. They were foreign advisors integrated into the security architecture of a sovereign nation. By engaging and killing Cuban military personnel, the United States has internationalized this conflict instantly.
Inadvertently or perhaps deliberately.
That is the question. It has drawn Havana directly into the grievance, creating a martyr narrative that will resonate far beyond Venezuela's borders.
The diplomatic fallout was, as you'd expect, instantaneous.
Immediate. Russia and China issued condemnations. Moscow's foreign ministry was particularly scathing, using terms like hypocrisy.
Citing the violation of international law. But the most significant response came from the architect of the policy himself.
Yes. In a recent interview with the New York Times, President Trump made a statement that seems to have shattered the post-World War II diplomatic consensus.
What was this statement?
When pressed on the legality of the intervention, he stated that international law does not constrain his actions, only his personal morality.
Only his personal morality.
Yeah.
A profound rhetorical pivot.
It is. Analysts are already coining a term for this. The Monroe Doctrine.
A modernization of the Monroe Doctrine.
A weaponization of it. The original Monroe Doctrine was a shield. This Monroe Doctrine asserts, and the tactical shift here is alarming. Following the success, in their eyes, of the Venezuela operation, the U.S. administration has turned its gaze to Mexico. We're hearing direct threats of ground attacks against drug cartels.
Inside sovereign Mexican territory.
Inside their territory. This is a departure from the traditional maritime strategy of stopping boats. This is a threat of boots on the ground in a G20 nation.
And the reaction from Mexico City? President Claudia Sheinbaum is in a possible position.
She is walking a razor's edge. President Sheinbaum has firmly rejected any U.S. military intervention, citing the absolute inviolability of Mexican sovereignty. She has to.
Politically, she has no other choice.
None. To accept U.S. troops hunting cartels on Mexican soil would be political suicide. However, behind the scenes, she's forced to coordinate on security to appease Washington.
So the internal pressure must be immense.
Immense. She's managing national pride while trying to prevent a unilateral U.S. incursion that could destabilize the entire relationship.
Moving south to Colombia, the situation is even more volatile.
A diplomatic roller coaster over the last 14 days.
First, President Trump accused Colombian President Gustavo Petro of involvement in the drug trade.
A charge that usually precedes sanctions or worse. Then, in a sudden pivot, President Petro receives an invitation to the White House for February 3rd.
It's classic coercive diplomacy.
It is. The accusation was the stick. The dinner invitation is the carrot. The strategy appears to be, we have shown you what we did to Maduro. Now, let's talk.
But while the leaders play chess, the pieces on the board are starting to burn.
They are. The instability has triggered a dangerous mobilization. Intelligence from Stylo indicates that the ELN, the National Liberation Army, and various dissident factions are coalescing.
These are groups that have historically been at odds, are they not?
Very much so. But the threat of a Yankee invasion is a powerful unifying force. We are looking at approximately 9,400 fighters declaring a readiness to form a rebel alliance.
A unified resistance against potential U.S. aggression.
That's their stated goal. So, while President Petro prepares for a state dinner, the jungles of Colombia are bracing for war. The rhetoric has inadvertently mobilized a massive paramilitary force.
And the ripple effects continue into Ecuador. This is not just about rhetoric, it's about hardware.
That's correct. We're seeing a militarization of the Ecuadorian coast. 10,000 troops, including special forces, have been deployed to cities like Guayaquil and Manta.
To combat gang violence.
That's the stated reason, yes. Gangs linked to the Mexican and Colombian cartels. But for our listeners, there is a very specific, tangible impact that highlights the severity of this.
You are referring to the aviation warnings.
I am. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, has issued NOTAMs, or notices to airmen, for the Pacific airspace near Central America. They are warning of increased military activity and GPS interference.
Until March 2026.
Until March 2026. Let's unpack what that means. GPS interference doesn't just annoy pilots. It degrades navigation systems for commercial flights, for shipping logistics, for supply chains. The region is effectively in a pre-war posture regarding electronic warfare.
We must broaden our lens now. While the kinetic action is in South America, the Monroe Doctrine is being applied globally.
It is. We have reports of tensions rising in the Arctic, specifically regarding Greenland.
This is the extension of the resource security theme. President Trump has reiterated claims and threats, framing it as a necessary acquisition to prevent Russian and Chinese encirclement.
It sounds reminiscent of 19th century territorial expansion.
It does, but the strategic logic is very 21st century. The Arctic is the next frontier for resources and shipping lanes.
Denmark and Greenland have, of course, firmly rejected these claims, but consider the damage this does to NATO.
The leading member of the alliance making territorial overtures toward another member's autonomous territory.
It strains the cohesion of the pact at a time when Western unity is supposedly paramount.
And thousands of miles away, there is a development involving Argentina and Iran that seems disconnected yet. It fits perfectly into this pattern.
Yes. On January 17th and 18th, Argentina officially blacklisted Iran's Quds Force as a terrorist organization.
That's a significant move.
It is. While rooted in history, the tragic bombings in Buenos Aires in the 90s, the timing is not coincidental.
Argentina is aligning itself with this new, aggressive U.S. posture.
By blacklisting the Quds Force now, they are joining the financial siege against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And this comes at a moment when the Iranian regime is facing perhaps its greatest existential threat from within.
We have seen reports of unrest, but the scale is difficult to verify. What is Stylo telling us?
The numbers are harrowing. We are seeing reports of mass protests across Iran being met with a crackdown of medieval brutality.
What are the estimates?
Estimates place the death toll at 16,500. These are not combatants. These are largely young protesters. The regime is cornered.
So the Argentine move adds external pressure to a boiler that is already bursting internally.
It connects the South American theater to the Middle East. It is a global campaign of pressure against perceived enemies of this new doctrine.
We've covered a tremendous amount of ground: Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia, the Arctic, Iran. We need to synthesize this.
Yeah.
If we pull back and look at the pattern of life across the globe, what does it tell us about the next few months?
The pattern is a decided shift away from multilateralism. We are entering an era of what you might call transactional unilateralism.
Meaning the U.S. will act alone.
Alone and forcefully, to secure resources, be it oil in Venezuela or strategic depth in Greenland, regardless of international consensus.
And the sentiment. How is the world reacting to this new reality?
It is deeply polarized. In Latin America, the analysis shows high anxiety regarding sovereignty, a palpable fear of a return to the interventionist policies of the 20th century.
But there must be another side to that.
There is. We must be balanced. There is also a segment of the population weary of cartel violence that quietly supports the iron fist approach.
And in Europe.
Confusion and concern over the stability of alliances. And for the average citizen, the impact is real. Travel warnings are spiking. The tourism industry in Latin America is bracing for a collapse.
So for the listener trying to navigate this, what are the watch points? What happens next?
3 critical pivots to watch. First, February 3rd, the meeting between President Trump and President Petro. That will decide if we see de-escalation or a ground war in Colombia.
Second,
The trial of Nicolás Maduro in New York. The intelligence revealed in that courtroom could implicate other leaders. And finally, the black swan, risk, a miscalculation.
with GPS jamming, thousands of rebels, and high tensions.
A single accidental engagement could spark a conflict that diplomacy cannot contain.
It is a complex, volatile picture, and frankly, relying on the evening news to keep up with this velocity of change is no longer sufficient.
I agree completely. In an environment where GPS signals are being jammed and governments are falling overnight, you need intelligence, not just headlines.
And this is where Stylo News becomes a critical tool for the individual.
It does.
As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Stylo News is the consumer application of the Stylo Intel Ops software. It puts the power of pattern-of-life analysis right in your pocket.
Exactly. You can download the app on mobile or computer. It allows you to create customizable briefs. If you're a business owner with supply chains in Mexico, you can set up a specific intelligence brief for that border region.
Or if you're traveling, you can monitor safety corridors in real time.
That's right. And it integrates data from hundreds of traditional sources, but importantly, it also pulls from X, formerly Twitter, where raw footage often breaks first.
And it uses the location AI bot. You can ask it to forecast timelines.
You can ask, what is the likelihood of flight disruptions in Ecuador next week? And it will synthesize the data to give you a probability. It transforms you from a passive observer into an active analyst.
We strongly recommend you subscribe to these on-demand AI-powered news briefs. You can find them at www.stylonews.com.
In times like these, information is the only true currency. It's about preparedness.
Thank you. And now, stepping away from the news desk for a moment, we want to extend a sincere thank you to you, the listener.
We do.
We know this was a heavy briefing. The world feels particularly heavy right now.
It does. It can be overwhelming to hear about troop movements and death tolls. But remember, understanding the mechanisms, the why and the how, is the first step in navigating them.
Fear thrives in the dark.
And facts are the light. We hope this deep dive has provided some of that light tonight.
We encourage you to reach out to us. This show is for you. If there are specific topics or crises you want us to unpack in future deep dives, please let us know.
And please, follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms to keep the conversation going.
Stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, look out for one another.
Stay safe.
Until next time, wishing you clarity in a complex world. Good night.